Hi everyone, my name is Genevia. I am a beauty founder turned web designer for HB Lighthouse, a web design studio that helps health and beauty brands launch their websites or redesign their existing websites. And so I go in and create memorable, user-friendly experiences for their customers that keep them coming back. And so right now I want to go into a little story time to just give you guys some background, some context as to how I went from beauty entrepreneur to web designer. So I will start with my dreams and aspirations to work in the fashion industry. This is kind of sort of how everything started. I graduated from college, and even during college, I knew that I wanted to work in fashion. Like, that was what I wanted to do. You couldn't tell me otherwise. I knew I was going to have a career in fashion. So, had aspirations to work in the industry. I moved to New York and actually ended up working in beauty as a temp. So I was working as a contractor for L'Oreal and for Estee Lauder. And I would go from department to department, and that's really when I was exposed to beauty, because prior to then I wasn't a makeup girl. I wasn't wearing makeup in college. Like, that just wasn't what I was doing. I think maybe around that time I was doing my eyebrows but otherwise I wasn't giving beauty any business. Like, I just wasn't paying attention. And so working at L'Oreal is what really exposed me to the beauty industry, because I sat on the marketing floor, but I was working for two vice presidents that worked in the hair category. But actually, I don't know if the woman worked in hair, but I know the guy did that I was an admin for. And so I was working in sales nonetheless, and I was sitting on the marketing floor. So all the free products. Like, I had access to the nail polish, mascara, lipstick, lip gloss, like everything that you could imagine L'Oreal sells. I was like, it would just be like an arm's length away from me, grab it, take it home, like whatever. So that's when I started, like, developing this interest in beauty personally, not business wise. So that's when I started, doing more, looking more into makeup and things of that nature. I, again, had this interest in fashion, and while I was at Estee Lauder, I was working in the sustainability department, I believe it was, and I got this random email from this person, this girl, who was like, hey, we have your resume. We think that you'd be a great fit for this position at Century 21 department store is what it's called. So she emailed me about a role that I had never applied for at Century 21 department store. But I think that they found my resume because I had applied to another role. So it was one of those situations where they were like, oh no, we don't think she's a good fit for this role, but maybe she can fill this role. So when she sent me the email, I was like, I'm working in the city. Like, I'm not trying to, like, work in New Jersey. But what's interesting is I actually lived in Jersey at that time. But I didn't want to work in Jersey. I wanted to work in the city because I had, once again, dreams of working in fashion. And fashion is not in Jersey except for this one department store. But so I was like, and you know what? Actually, the department store is not even in Jersey. Their, like, warehouse where they keep all their clothes is in New Jersey, but the actual store is in New York. They might have had other branches in Jersey, but like the headquarters, like the main store, is in New York City. So upon receiving that email, I was just like, I'm not interested. I don't want, it's cool. Like, I'm at work. I'm working right now. And she was like, oh no, it'll be really quick. Like, we just want you to come in. You can come at 8:30 and then you can be back at work by 9:30. It should all be fine. And so, like, at that point, I was kind of torn because, like, on one hand, temp jobs are not secure. There's no guarantee you're going to get another contract. And then on this hand, I needed a salary job. Like, I had just graduated college not too long ago. It might have actually been like 2 years at that point, and I was looking for my big break in New York. It was a clothing store, it's a fashion store. Maybe this could be my start, right? So I accepted the interview. So I that day had to take a bus to wherever the location was. Again, because I lived in Jersey, it was actually not that far for me to take a bus, and then I had to like walk like maybe like 5 minutes to get to their like building. So I get to the interview, and I do my interview with this lady, and she was like, okay, cool, you're hired. Hired me on the spot. Like, you know, you hear stories about people getting hired on the spot, or like you see that in movies or you'll hear about it, but like it actually happened to me. Like, she hired me on the spot. The whole time I wasn't even really sure that I wanted the role. 30K was what they was offering. But again, I had these really big dreams and aspirations to work in fashion in New York. 30K. I took it because guess what? Baby girl ain't got no steady, secure income. I'm trying to break in fashion. Sign me up to do whatever. And the job itself, I never had heard of it. Like, the job was to be a writer, a product spec writer. So I was writing specifications. So like measurements of clothing, just all the nitty gritty details that you typically would see on your websites about, you know, the details of a brand, or the details of like a top, a dress, jeans, pants, suits. All of that is what I was writing. I had never heard of copywriting or even spec writing. So I was like, okay, this seems pretty easy. I can write. Cool, let's do it. I worked there for about a year and was very much over it within like 6 months. But I worked there for a year, and then I had applied to work at Saks Fifth Avenue, and I got the offer. So I started working at Saks Fifth Avenue. Actually, it was Saks off Fifth Avenue. But because Saks owns off Fifth, me and all the Saks Fifth girls we all sat together in an office. And I would help the Saks Fifth Avenue girls with some of their copy. So I got this job as a junior copywriter at Saks Fifth Avenue, working on the Off Fifth label. So I was writing copy for women's apparel. I did some men's, kids, jewelry. We did get some beauty items. Off Fifth didn't really have that many beauty items, but a couple. Sometimes I would help the full line girls with some of their copy if they were like swamped with work. So I was finally like making my way. I went from product spec writer to junior copywriter. And then shortly after, like maybe 3 months in, my manager leaves. And so there's a huge gap there. And so I was tapped by our director to be like acting manager. So I was doing that role for maybe like a couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks until they could fill that role. And because I did that very successfully, transitioned very seamlessly into that acting manager role, I was promoted. So from junior copywriter to now copywriter. Baby, I was loving life. I mean, that discount. So I was working at, you know, one of the top luxury department stores in the country. So it was going well, and then they did layoffs. My manager got laid off, the director got laid off, but the nice thing is we were told that we would get laid off as well at some point. Just prepare yourselves and maybe start looking for jobs, and so that's what we did. But all the managers got laid off, director got laid off, and then we moved to a completely different location. So when I was working at Off Fifth, we were in the best, I think is the best location in New York to work at, Flatiron District, hands down. Everything is in that location. It's very close to Fifth Avenue. It's very close to Chelsea. You have food places to go to. I mean, when I would get off work, I would just walk to the Trader Joe's, get groceries, and then hop on the train to go home. And I lived in Brooklyn at that time, so the journey was a little lengthy, but like walking to the grocery store and then like hopping on the train, like, and then having to walk home, you know, it's a lot. But everything, it was just so perfect. Sometimes you would go on break and want to just go shopping down the street real quick, like spending money, making the money, and then spending the money. But it was a good time. So we moved from Flatiron, sadly, to Brookfield Place, which is the city's like shopping mall, if you will. So Brookfield Place is located by the World Trade Center, like the behind it, or it's in that area. It's downtown. And so it's a shopping mall, but they also have office buildings on the other side. So I think there's a bunch of different companies in that building, but Saks Fifth Avenue moved to that building. They also are headquartered at the store on Fifth Avenue. Like a lot of I forget who sits at the store, but a lot of us who worked in corporate sat at Brookfield Place. So the job began to really change from copywriting to like data entry, which at that time was a huge red flag. But again, we already knew that we were going to get laid off at some point. We just didn't know when. So working in this role, the role in itself completely changed. It just became very, very different. And then I remember my grandmother passed away. And I think this was 2016. My grandmother passed away, and so I had to go. I was actually in Maryland because I'm from Maryland. I was in Maryland that weekend she passed, and we buried her like a couple of days later because she was Muslim, and so Muslims typically don't. They like bury very quickly. So I remember calling my job and letting them know, like, hey, I'm not coming in to work on Monday. I think she passed on a Sunday. My grandmother passed away, and I had to like prove that she passed away, and so I had to like, send a bunch of stuff. But I remember, I think we buried her on a Tuesday, and then I remember like that Wednesday or Thursday, because I was on bereavement at that time. But that Wednesday or Thursday is when they called me, HR and like the not the hiring, but our direct manager called and was like, hey, we just want to let you know that you're being laid off. Okay, so when and again, knew that it was coming, had prepared, was looking, but like, y'all telling me when my grandmother passed away? And I love my grandmother. Loved her. So, baby, I was bawling. I was devastated. I was hurt, crying. I went to my parents' room and I just could not contain myself. I was so livid, especially since I thought it was so insensitive of them calling me. Like, I just lost my grandmother. Like, why would y'all call me to tell me that I just lost my job? So anyway, so there was a catch though. So they're like, yeah, you're being laid off, but your last day isn't going to be until like XYZ. I forget. I think it was like in the fall when all of this happened. No, my grandmother passed away in July. Child, it's been a while. So I think we had like a month or two left. We had to continue working there, even though we knew we were going to be laid off on a certain date. So maybe I was looking for jobs like never before, right? So I remember applying to an internal position with Saks Fifth Avenue with the creative department. I interviewed for the job. I got hired. So my severance never went through. Maybe I wish that severance would have went through. I would have collected that very nice check and I would have a job, right? So anyhow, I started working with the creative team in another department on another floor. Actually, no, yeah, it was another floor. It was the other side of Brookfield Place is what it was. So I was at one point working, child, Brookfield Place has so many different sides, but I was working, I had to move to another side of the building. And so different team, I was still a copywriter, but my title changed to editorial copywriter just to like give you guys more details. So it changed from copywriter to editorial copywriter, which basically meant that I was working on print pieces. So I was doing what I had wanted to do at that point. Like I was still working in fashion, but then like because this interest in beauty blossomed, I started working on beauty campaigns. Like I was writing copy for a lot of our in-store signs, beauty and fashion books, taxi top, and bus shelters. Like I was writing all the words, all the messaging on every single thing that needed to be printed for the store, or just like out of home. And so it was almost like a dream job for me. And it was going really well. And then I got laid off again. So I got laid off twice from the same company. But you know, to be honest, the second time around, I was cool. I don't think I cried. I just remember packing my stuff, getting on the train and going back to Brooklyn, and then continuing with my business. So at that time, I was like working like very, very, very much on my cosmetics line, 327 Cosmetics. And that's what I was looking forward to. And I was like, all right, well, this didn't work out. I'm about to be an entrepreneur and I'm about to build this beauty brand. And I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I grinded. I was up late working on launching 327. I had photo shoots when I was living in New York at that time. I was just doing what I needed to do. But I was also looking for another job. Couldn't find one. Okay, like just when I say God was just like, listen, my daughter, you need to leave this place. And I just didn't want to listen. I was very, very stubborn. God just showed up and showed out, and he said, you need to leave New York right now. You are not coming back here. Because it was like I had moved to New York twice. And he was like, this is it. Like you had your little fun. You had your little fashion fun, your little dreams and your little aspirations. You had your fun. It's time to go back to your mother's house, back to your parents' house. Go. And I said, okay. I broke my lease. I had a roommate. I broke my lease. I told her, girl, I'm leaving. And I left. And all of this was like, I think I was laid off in February, and I ended up moving back. I broke my lease in like May, I think, and I moved back to Maryland to live in my parents' home at my very big age in June. And baby, in June, I launched 327 Cosmetics. Because I wasn't playing. Like, there was no looking back. I launched it, and I was looking for jobs. Secured a job in like November as a copywriter working at an educational technology company. So it was my first job in tech. And I hired someone to do my website. I was on WordPress. I don't know why she advised me to be on WordPress, and I'm pretty sure she did because I had no idea nothing about no websites. I had worked in e-commerce, but as far as like building a website, or which platform to use, I know nothing. So I trusted her expertise. She said that WordPress would be a good fit. I think there were a couple other options, but I went with WordPress because I was familiar with it. Like I had heard about it. And plus I had used it because I was also a beauty blogger for a while, and I had a blog on WordPress. So I was like, all right, cool, WordPress. Biggest mistake. And that's for a whole nother video. Like I couldn't even, that's just a whole nother video. But I had a company. I was an entrepreneur. And so my whole strategy was to attend all the events in the DMV area. And that's where I made most of my money, doing events, talking to people in person. I had the whole setup. The setup, I had a brand ambassador that was helping me. Shout out to Jordan. Hey, she has her own beauty brand now, Imari Butters. Check her out on Instagram and follow her. So I hired all the help that I needed. I've never been the one to think that I could do everything by myself. So I had a CPA, an accountant. I had lawyer friends look over different documents for me, especially contracts that I needed if I was going to work with photographer, models, graphic designers, whoever. So I was always set up in those areas. So again, did all the events. I also sold online through WordPress, but I absolutely hated my website. It was so slow. Like, I had so many plugins to basically achieve the desired user experience that I wanted. And the plugins were making my site really slow. And then just the look, the design, the feel, I just hated it. So I think I started doing a little bit of research and realized that there was a platform called Shopify, which really changed the game for me because Shopify is literally meant for online selling. It's for e-commerce stores. I migrated all of my content information from WordPress to Shopify and loved it. It was so much better. I decided to close 327 in August 2020. I put a post on Instagram and I was like, y'all got like a couple more weeks to buy these lipsticks, these lip treatments, these, like, y'all got a couple of weeks. Okay. And so shut that down, and then I started HB Lighthouse. So HB Lighthouse initially started as a platform to bring visibility to health and beauty brands. Like, that is what I started to do because I wanted to switch into a more service-based brand. So I created that platform to educate women who were looking to start in the beauty industry, those who were sort of in the startup phase, working their way to growth stage. And I was creating a lot of educational content and offering up a lot of my experience as an entrepreneur, the triumphs, the failures. So I was doing lots of IG lives. I think it was like 2 times a month, preparing for those lives, talking to women, again, who were in these big retail stores who entrepreneurs dream of selling their products in. And it was going well. I loved it, but I had so much content fatigue after like 8 months of doing that. I was so tired. Like, I was so drained. And then I disappeared. I disappeared for a good 2-3 years, to be honest. 2021 is when I was like, I'm taking a break. And I did not resurface until a few weeks ago. Yes. But it's so interesting because even in 2021, I finished my website. hblighthouse.com was done, and I published it, and it was live for like a week. But like, I didn't even have the energy to announce it to anybody, to tell anybody, because I was so drained. I was exhausted. And I knew that like, if I would have announced it, I need to be responsible and consistent with updating the website, because the website was basically going to be a directory for people to find different beauty brands, health brands, wellness brands. And I was like, if I publish this, I'm not going to update it. I'm not going to update it. Like, I just know that I'm not going to update it. So I was like, let me hit unpublish. Ultimately, I was just feeling very stuck. Like, I didn't know what to do. Like, even when I came out of my content fatigue, I was just like, or my content creation fatigue rather, I was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I don't want to have a social impact business, because that's what it was sort of turning into. And as much as I'm very much black, like, I'm black, and I will always forever be an advocate of other black folks in business, because historically we have been shut out of a lot of opportunities, whether it is economic barriers, social barriers, institutional barriers. And so I will always support however I can. But I didn't necessarily want to have a business built around the idea of social impact. So I had to think about all of that because I started HB Lighthouse in 2020 when, you know, the whole thing with George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of those things happened. And there were so many different businesses popping up to do that social justice impact work, right? And I was like, I don't necessarily want to compete with y'all. Like, I want to just, I'm doing this because I want to help other Black people, particularly women, build their businesses because I have this experience as a founder, especially for those who are, you know, building their businesses from the ground up. I want to help. I didn't necessarily know how. I had this big vision for HB Lighthouse, but I didn't necessarily want to pursue it or execute anymore. So I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I literally took 3 years off figuring that out. And then sometime last year, I was talking to a friend, like I had fresh ideas started coming, like there was a reawakening. And I had conversations with myself and with Jesus about what I was supposed to do. And I know that I still wanted to do a service-based brand because I still wanted to help other people. So I had this idea of sort of pulling all of my experiences and creating a consultancy. So I have experience as a copywriter. I worked in copywriting for about 9 years in both beauty, fashion, education. So I was like, why don't I just like take my copy experience, and then I worked as a marketer for nonprofits. I have experience writing copy for websites and email campaigns. So like I can pull all of that together and help other health and beauty brands, help other entrepreneurs build themselves up with their website copy, with their emails and things of that nature. So I ran the idea past my friend, and she recommended that I add another skill to it. And so she was like, why don't you become a web designer? A what? So she recommended that I become a whole entire web designer. And at first I was like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, did you listen to anything that I just said? Like marketing, like I'm trying to like help people with their web copy, like messaging. And she was like, yeah, I know, but like you should add another skill. Like maybe you should actually design their websites and write the copy. And I was like, wait a minute, I gotta think about this. So it was me and Jesus for a very long time figuring out if that was like what I was supposed to do. And then I came to the conclusion that that's what I needed to do. So I had no experience whatsoever with web designing, but again, I had this journey, this career journey where I worked in e-commerce. I worked as a copywriter in marketing, on creative teams. I've worked with so many graphic designers, multimedia specialists. I've worked on lots of web assets, created the content myself. Now, as a web designer, it's me actually building and designing the website, which is a whole different discipline, but I'm still familiar with the aspects of marketing, and web is another marketing channel. So for me, it all kind of made sense, like beauty founder turned web designer, but I should also say copywriter / creative turned web designer, which is all very much connected, right? So again, I had no experience. I took a class and learned all that I could learn. It was like 3 months long, and I know how to code. I know how to customize websites, particularly websites that are on Shopify's platform. I didn't necessarily hear God say, that's what I want you to pursue. But I prayed on it diligently and asked God, like, is this the right thing for me? And I literally did not take this class for months. But like, God did not say nothing. But I know that the promises of God are yes and amen. And that's literally in 2 Corinthians 1:20. So 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20. For all the promises of God in him are yea, and in him amen, unto the glory of God by us. So knowing this, I know that, sometimes you're not going to necessarily hear God speak. But I know that my friend definitely was a messenger of God, because I needed something. Like I knew that entrepreneurship was something that I needed to do, but I just was like, how do I monetize HB Lighthouse but still help people? Because I can't make this content no more. I'm tired of making this type of content, and I can't pursue social impact, justice. Like, it's exhausting, y'all. I'm not even gonna sit here in front. Like, it is exhausting sometimes. So I was like, I'm not doing all of that. So my friend, definitely the angel that she is, was like, gave me an idea. You need to be a web designer, period. She saw something, and I see something now. And I'm just encouraging anybody out there who's like, I don't know, I feel stuck, I'm not sure, whether it's launching that business that you've been sitting on for some time. You just need to go out there and do it. Put yourself out there. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Ain't nobody, like, who cares? God don't care. If you're a child of God, you did what you did, and now you got to move on. You look forward. And so the promises of God are yes and amen. And as long as it is a righteous thing that you're doing, if it's going to serve God, if it's going to glorify God, and of course help you change your life in the process, that's a good thing. But you should always seek God, seek his face, and really try to understand, what you should do. In my experience, I sometimes hear God say certain things to me, and then sometimes I don't. And so just encouraging y'all to, like, pursue entrepreneurship. If you have a brand, a beauty brand, or a wellness brand that you really want to bring to fruition, do it. Do it. There are so many resources out there that you can use to help you build your brand. Put God first, and follow your desires. I mean, as long as they align with the word of God, he will see you through. He will absolutely be faithful and see you through. So that is my time. Thank you all so much for watching my channel. Make sure that you subscribe, like this video. Moving forward, it will be all live content from me, where you can ask questions in real time, and we can chat about web things, copy tips, web design tips, and e-commerce strategy. So again, thank you all for watching my channel, and be sure you subscribe right here. There's a subscribe button that you can click on, and like this video and all my other videos and all my other content that you see. Bye.